Number 1. The Rustling. This happened a very long time ago. It was in 1976. To indicate how disturbing it was for me, it's taken me this long to really talk about it. My best friend in high school was a guy named Brian. When we graduated, we ended up going to different colleges, so we didn't get to see each other that much. And communication in the 70s, it wasn't as easy as it is nowadays. No email, and expensive long distance meant that we could only communicate with postcards or letters. But we had an agreement that in the beginning of every single summer vacation, the two of us would go camping for a week. I won't mention where we went camping at. Just know that it was in a very large, forested area. We had a map, and we tried to see how far we could go in half of our week before turning and making it back. We slept in different tents. The morning after the third night of hiking, Brian told me that he hadn't slept that great. He said that he kept hearing a rustling in the leaves outside his tent. He actually thought that there was a human out there, walking around our camping area. I told him it was probably just an animal, and that I couldn't think of a reason why a person would be circling our camp in the middle of the night. The following morning, Brian once again looked like he hadn't slept very much. When I asked, he told me that he had heard the same rustling around our camp as he had the night before. He insisted again that he thought it was a person. I wasn't really sure what I could tell him. I mean, if it was a person, there wasn't a whole lot we could do about it. We were at the halfway point of our week, and we were beginning to head back anyway. So I couldn't say, let's just turn around and leave. We were already doing that. The next night, usually, I would fall asleep pretty immediately. However, I decided that I would try and stay up the following night to see if I could hear what Brian had been hearing. I tried staying up, but kept feeling my eyes trying to close up on their own. I kept catching myself and jerking my head up to stay awake. I think it was when I finally drifted off that something pulled me out of my sleep. There was some noise, some rustling coming from around the camp, and that immediately woke me up. I listened, and Brian was really right. It sounded like someone was circling the camp. I mean, I had no way of knowing if it was a person instead of an animal as Brian claimed, but I guess I didn't know why an animal would just keep circling the tents all night, rather than actually do something. I didn't sleep very well that night. Eventually I drifted off though. When I got up, I noticed that Brian hadn't gotten up yet. I decided to let him sleep for a while. He likely needed any sleep he could get. However, when about an hour passed and he still hadn't gotten up, I decided to wake him up. I called for Brian. No answer. I knocked on his tent, which is a funny thing to say, I admit. No answer. I then called louder. No answer. I never would have opened his tent without his permission, but I was a bit worried. So I opened the tent to wake him up. He wasn't in it. I was a bit worried, but figured that he probably just woke up early and went out on his own. But another hour passed and he didn't come back. I started calling for him. He never responded. I combed the area. I couldn't find him. I can't explain how difficult this situation was. I waffled over just looking for him by myself or booking it to a ranger station. When I spent a significant amount of time trying to find him and failing, I finally went to a ranger station. A search was organized. The search had no better luck than I had. They didn't find a single trace of Brian. That was 41 years ago. I haven't seen nor heard hide nor hair of Brian since that day. They never found a body, living or dead. I never saw my best friend again, and I have no idea what happened to him. But my view is pretty much that whatever happened to my buddy, it had something to do with whomever or whatever was circling our tents that night. Number 2. Intruding. I take an annual camping trip by myself. I live in New York, but I was actually raised out in the country. Every year, I have to get away from the hustle and bustle of city life, and I just enjoy nature. About 5 years ago, I had a really scary occurrence while out on my trip. I was out for a good hike. Maybe about 2 days into my trip, I came across something that really surprised me. It was a surprise to me that there was actually an old cabin out in the mountains. Immediately, every horror movie about a cabin in the woods shot through my head. You know how you watch a horror movie, and you see someone do something really stupid, and you yell at the person, and wonder how they could be such idiots. And then you tell yourself that in a similar situation, you wouldn't do the stupid thing. Well, it seems that this is much easier said than done. I did the stupid thing. I went in to explore the cabin. It was old, rotted, and the floor made unbelievably loud creaking noises as I walked across it. It was a bit of a rush, actually. I kept expecting someone to jump out at me and scare the crap out of me, but it was pretty obvious that no one had been in here in a long, long time. There were some really neat things in the cabin, and nothing was really scary. There was some very rustic furniture that had almost completely rotted away. Mostly it was like I was getting a view of a time long past. There were a few doors, and I opened them to see what the other rooms were like. There was a very rustic kitchen area, and a very rustic bathroom. The third door I figured had to be a bedroom. I thought I should check it out. I opened the door, and indeed, it was a bedroom, but my heart practically stopped when I saw it. There was a bed with a metal frame and a rotted comforter on it, but lying on the bed was a human skeleton, and it was tied to the bed with straps. About 8 straps if I remember correctly. What got me the most was that it didn't look like it was wounded. So I crept up on it, looking around, and didn't see a knife wound or anything. So I thought then that possibly someone had tied this unfortunate person to the bed and starved them to death. I mean, I guess they could have died some other way. I'm just telling you what went through my head at the time. I marked the area the cabin was in on my map. I was surprised the cabin wasn't already marked there. When I got out of the woods, I reported it to the police. But even though the body was probably there a long time, and whomever tied them down was long gone, getting out of the mountains was a creepy experience. I started hearing noises and got very jumpy. I kept thinking someone was following me, although that wasn't likely. It was just a completely freaky experience. Number 3. The Threat. This is a little different than your typical scary camping story. This didn't happen while I was alone, and it didn't happen way out in the wilderness. A bunch of friends of mine rented a cabin for a couple weeks during the summer. Basically, it was just going to be a 2-week party with lots of beer and weed. Also, I want to point out that our cabin was not way out in the woods. It was in a very recreational area, in which many cabins were available for rent. We could actually see several other cabins from our own. So my friends and I built a fire every night. We sat around it and did camp stuff. You know, drink, pot, ghost stories, roast beast. My friend Justin got himself really drunk, and revealed that he had brought some fireworks with him. He lit them in the fire, and it was pretty cool. Not long after the fireworks went off, we were interrupted by a pretty big guy. He came up to the fire, He didn't say hi or introduce himself. He immediately just started yelling at us about the fireworks. Apparently he had been sleeping and the noise had woke him up. We tried apologizing to the guy, but he wouldn't even let us talk. He just kept talking over us about how inconsiderate we were. Justin kept trying to interject and apologize. When Justin took a step towards the guy, with his hands out indicating he meant no harm, that's when the guy turned to Justin and told him if he took another step towards him, the guy would kill him. Now that's when I had enough. I was nowhere near as big as the guy, but I have a very loud voice and a nasty temper. I told the guy to shut the hell up, and that all we were doing was trying to apologize to him, and he wasn't letting us. That's when he started moving towards me, and basically all 5 of my friends got up. He realized that as tough as he thought he was, he couldn't get into a fight with 6 people. Throwing around every swear word I'd ever heard, plus a few new ones, the guy left. Not long after, we all went inside. My friends all went to bed before I did. I was still a bit worked up over the incident. I decided to sit in the living room and read for a little while. I'm a smoker, and even though it wasn't a non-smoking cabin, I always smoke outside anyway. So I went out and sat on the swing on the porch to smoke. That was when I noticed that our fire wasn't all the way out. I went over to stamp it out so it didn't spread somehow and start a forest fire. As I was stamping out the fire, I heard some noises from behind me. I turned around just in time for a fist to hit me in the face. I knew it was the guy from earlier and he fell on top of me. He had a knife and he put it to my throat. He started talking to me, threatening me under his breath. I can't say I remember everything he was saying, but the gist of it was him telling me it wasn't easy for me to act like a big man without my friends around. He also told me not to call for them, or else. I wasn't sure what to do, but I was really scared. I honestly thought the guy would kill me, but he eventually did take the knife away from my throat. But he kept his knee pressed into my back so I couldn't get up. I felt the guy grab my hand. He pulled it up and grabbed onto my fingers. I asked him what he was going to do. He told me he was going to give me something to remember him by. He took the 4 fingers of my left hand and quickly bent them back. I screamed and I felt all of them snap. He then told me if I told anyone what happened, I could look forward to the knife next time. He then let me up. Well, of course I was going to tell someone. I got my friends up. Justin was pissed, and he grabbed his compound hunting bow. He was really determined to go kill the guy. I talked him down from it, and told him we could just call the cops. As I mentioned, we weren't that far out from civilization. We got a police officer, and an ambulance. The jackass got arrested, so I guess it's a happy ending. I was able to stay at the cabin for the rest of the vacation, without having to worry about him coming after me. But all 4 fingers of my left hand were broken, and that was pretty agonizing. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this video. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you're truly bored, you can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. So, as most of you know, I'm a wrestling fan. I took the weekend off to just relax and watch WrestleMania, but I was sort of chomping at the bit to get these stories out. I've been thinking about my proposed schedule, and I think I'm going to change it up. It seems like it's easier for me to get my first video of the week out on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. So I'm going to try something like this. I will do true story videos on Wednesdays and Fridays, a miscellaneous video on Thursday, and finally a top 5 list on Saturday. I'll try to update the cover page of my channel to reflect this. And speaking of my top 5 videos, I have decided to try something different. I get sent a lot of pictures of beautiful cats, both Killer Orange and other. I also have people send me pictures for my intro, so I'm going to use my top 5 videos to display some viewer artwork and viewer cats. so please send artwork and cat pictures to the email address included in the description. In the meantime, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.